Hello guys, I'm Tina Marie J. If you're new here, then I hope you enjoy this video, and if you do, then don't forget to give a nice little thumbs up, and if you really enjoy this channel and you would love to see more, then subscribe. So have you guys ever heard of PTSD? Well, PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder or post-traumatic stress syndrome, and PTSD, it's a mental thing. To veterans, people who've been in horrible accidents, people who just have had traumatic events in their life. I recently found out that PTSD actually exists in cult survivors. Now, I was doing a little research and I found out that there's actually something called post-cult trauma syndrome, which is PCTS. Yes, PCTS. A woman named Margaret Singer, she was a psychologist and she studied the influence of groups and cults. And I actually started watching a bunch of her video series on YouTube when I decided to leave the ICOC, and she really helped me to leave because I did not know I was in a cult until I really started to look up information. Down below in the description box, I will have a link to the website that I found this on and some information on Margaret Singer. I'll see if I could pull up some videos and link them down below. Margaret Singer helped me to realize that the ICOC is a cult, and that is how I was able to tell whether what I was a part of was normal or not. So I want to get back to this post-cult trauma syndrome. Some people can leave the ICOC or leave any cult for that matter and feel okay. Some people could leave and they don't feel any emotional connection to the cult because that's just how they're wired. And then there are other people who were so emotionally invested in this cult, such as myself, and we leave and it really affects us. I have a list here of symptoms, so I'm gonna read them off to you, and then afterwards I'm gonna go into my own personal experience of whichever one of these symptoms relate to me. A sense of loss, spontaneous crying, depression, fear of evil spirits taking over, confusion about right and wrong, guilt and shame, sexual conflicts, fear of going insane, alienation from family and friends, loneliness, panic and anxiety, fear of not obeying the cult's wishes, fear of God's wrath and loss of salvation. Okay, so I can relate to pretty much most of these on the list, so I know many of you can too, and I thought it would be a good idea if we just dive a little deeper into these. Now we're gonna start with sense of loss. When I left the ICOC, I had a huge sense of loss, and it lasted for probably about a year. I no longer feel it. I've been able to find things that would fulfill me and fill up that, I don't want to call it a void, but make me feel like I have a sense of purpose. When I was a part of the ICOC, I didn't feel I had a sense of purpose. I was always told that my only purpose was to serve God and God only, and that was it. When I left the ICOC, I felt like I lost a lot. I didn't just lose friendships, but I just lost myself, and I didn't know who I was, and I had to find myself again. Spontaneous crying. I did have a couple of moments where I had some spontaneous crying. I had moments where I would just sit there and I'd be fine one minute, and the next minute I just started crying out of nowhere. This did not happen to me often. It happened mainly within the first few weeks to the first few months of me leaving the ICOC. I couldn't explain it. It felt very strange to me why I felt emotional out of nowhere. Depression. I felt it for the first few months after leaving the cult. I've been depressed before, so there's levels of depression. I've felt extremely depressed before, and I felt like somewhere in the middle. After leaving the ICOC, my depression was strange because I felt empty. I felt like I didn't have a right to be sad. I didn't have a right to feel depressed, as if I brought it on myself. So my depression was not one of the norm for me. It wasn't a familiar type of depression. Honestly, I think some people experience it a lot more, so if you're feeling it, then you're definitely not alone. Fear of evil spirits taking over. I was scared to death to read certain books. Sometimes I still am. I was afraid of allowing myself to open up to certain things, to learn about different religions, especially Buddhism. I actually like some of the practices of Buddhism, and so I felt that evil would follow me. I had nightmares where I thought that my nightmares were because I left the cult and because I had opened a door to evil spirits because I was no longer reading my Bible. It was very overwhelming, and being a part of this cult, you do fear Satan following you. I remember I would say that Satan follows me everywhere I go, or he watches me at night. It was just really creepy stuff, but it was just my feelings and it felt really real. And if you're experiencing fear, know that you're not alone, and this is something that a lot of the members are taught to believe, and they're taught to tell you that if you are not in the word, then you're allowing for any evil and for Satan to take over. I was definitely confused about what's right and wrong up until probably a few months ago, actually, and it's been 2 years since I left the ICOC. I was just like, okay, I always thought this was right, but now I think this is wrong, but what if I'm wrong and it really is right? It was just one of those kind of things, and it's very confusing, and you get to a point where now you have to rebuild your life and build your own set of beliefs and your own faith based on what you feel and what you believe, rather than what people are telling you you have to believe. So that confusion can become very overwhelming, and it could definitely overpower someone. Guilt and shame, something that I think majority of us have experienced, because I've spoken to so many people who told me they felt guilty over something. I definitely felt guilty. I felt guilty when I left. I felt guilty if I had friends who were not Christian. I felt guilty having friends outside of the ICOC. I felt guilty about the fact that I didn't want to be in the ICOC. I felt guilty for everything. If I read a book that was not about God and I enjoyed it, I felt guilt. If I watched a movie and enjoyed it, or listened to music that had nothing to do with God and enjoyed it, like thoroughly enjoyed it, I felt guilty. I even felt guilty of getting rid of the stuff that reminded me of the ICOC. We become so involved in this cult, or in whatever cult you may have been a part of, that your whole identity is now wrapped up in it. And when you finally break out of that shell, it's like breaking out of glass that it just shatters all over the place, and you feel like you're left to pick up the pieces, and you don't know how to deal, and it's a very confusing time. Sexual conflicts. This is one thing that I did not experience. I guess because I'm married and my sex life was just the same before and after the cult. So I think this would probably relate more for those who were single, who were in the singles ministry of the ICOC. When it comes to sexuality and when it comes to just sex in general, they are very strict as to the rules of what you do and you don't do. So I could understand if someone who was a part of this church probably has issues with how they view sex after leaving, or with opening up sexually, or feeling comfortable with their sexuality. Fear of going insane. I thought that I was going insane for a very long time. Even before I left the cult, I thought I was going insane, because the simple fact that I didn't feel anyone could relate and understand how I felt. No one could grasp why I felt the way I felt. So I started to think that I was just going crazy. Sometimes all these feelings are so overwhelming, and you have so many thoughts running through your minds all at once, that you just start to feel like you're going insane. Like you literally feel like you're going crazy. Alienation from family and friends. I mostly felt this when I was a part of the ICOC, only because I did not really feel close with my family, because I wasn't seeing them like I used to, because I was always a part of something that had to do with the church. And when it came to my friends, I felt like I had to hide them. I didn't have that many friends to begin with. I didn't have any friends in the ICOC, probably like 2. I felt pretty alienated from just the outside world in general. Like, I was so new to the outside world, and I'd only been in it for 7 years, but 7 years of indoctrination is a lot because you get so much crap put in your mind, and it physically affects you, it emotionally and psychologically affects you. I had to find my balance and find a way to fit myself into the world that was not Christian, or a world that was not ICOC. Loneliness. So I felt pretty damn lonely because the people that I was friends with all stopped talking to me. So I had no friends anymore, and therefore I ended up feeling pretty lonely. My advice if you're feeling loneliness is to just make friends. Learn how to open up and make friends with people outside of your cult. You're going to have to learn how to just open up to anyone and to just learn new things and learn new people, but you have to go with an open mind, an open heart, and you cannot be judgmental. Panic and anxiety, unfortunately, does happen to some of us. I had dealt with a lot of panic and anxiety. I had panic when I would go to church. I still experience it. I had panic when I would do anything that had anything to do with church, because you feel like you have to be on guard, and you don't want to be on guard, but your body automatically just goes into this mechanism mode, and it just, boom, it shuts its natural self down, and out comes the guard. And when you do that, it can cause anxiety because you're just like on edge, like, what's a person doing? Why are they coming up to me? Why are they hugging me? Why do they want to talk to me? Well, what is this? Why am I going here? What do you want? I had anxiety about going to hell. I had anxiety about my future. I had anxiety about my marriage. I had anxiety about my kids. Am I leading them the wrong direction? The anxiety just goes on and on and on, and that's something that I still am working through, but I'm learning, and I learn more and more each day how to get through the anxiety, but that is something that is going to take a while. Fear of not obeying the cult's wishes and seeing God's wrath. This here is very serious. This is something that I felt more than anything else. I was scared to death when I left. I honestly can say that leaving the ICOC was the most scariest, difficult decision I've ever had to make in my life, because I felt like I was leaving my life. I left the ICOC and felt like I was leaving God. I felt like I was leaving religion or just Christianity, something I grew up with my entire life. I literally felt like I was leaving all that, and that was never my intention. That wasn't what I wanted. I just wanted to leave the church, and that was it. So I definitely feared for my loss of salvation, and I feared that God would leave me and he would never want to have anything to do with me. So if you are fearing loss of salvation, or if you're fearing that God is going to have his wrath on you, you're not the only one. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you don't feel that way, because you're going to feel that way. Especially if you were so invested and involved in your church, you won't be able to help it at that moment, but that is something you're going to have to take steps to work through. So guys, I hope that this video helped you at least to understand whatever you're experiencing. I could talk about this so much more, but this video will never end because there's just so many things we can say about it. So how about we do this? How about for the next several videos, we speak more about this, about the symptoms of the PTSD, how it affects us, and we just get into each symptom individually and see how can we get through this, how can we overcome this, how can we just learn how to move on past it and get on with our life. Now, I am starting a coaching program for those who were in a cult. You don't have to have been in the ICOC, but just anyone who was a part of any cult or any very controlling group in general. Hello Beautiful, HelloLife.com. Under coaching, there's a tab for spiritual abuse recovery. Right now, for the first 5 people, I am offering a complimentary experience. So you don't have to pay anything. It's free of charge for the first 5 people. After that, the price will be going up, and I will announce the price when that time comes. The coaching is a 3-month program, but depending on the individual, it could be 2 months. All you have to do is book a complimentary 60-minute call with me and see what we have to work with, see if this is a good fit for you. If anyone has any questions, you can leave a comment down below or email me. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys all so much as always, and I will see you soon.